You're going to have to excuse me because I have an asthma attack. So I'm going to read my notes because I tend to lose a little bit. So I do apologize. So, what is it? Our left and right? Which? Yes. Yeah. Okay. My recent work has been through the Victorian government, where we're trying to establish a circular economy and bring our major waste streams into resource streams so that we can produce product that is plant available, but also fit for purpose for farmers. These are some of the papers that I used. So with increasing medium and high density urbanization around the world and the limiting of natural resources, upvaluing of waste streams so that they are valued as resource streams becomes increasingly important. The impact of changing climate on weather patterns puts increasing pressure on crop production because of the increased pest and diseases encouraged by the warmer, wetter weather in the agricultural zones around the world. At the same time, urban waste is increasingly going into landfill because there is no apparent will to recycle to the extent that's required to use all the waste products generated in the community. It is here that the waste organic is being discussed. Food, or what we call FOGO, food organic, green organic, can be recycled by thermal aerobic composting, digested decomposting, windrowing composting where there's space. All of these methods produce an organic product that will enhance soil health, stimulate soil biota, improve nutrient content of foods grown in these materials, and lead to carbon capture, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improved plant, animal, and human health. Sustainability Victoria is a state government department with various programs addressing recycling and reducing waste, reducing emissions, supporting Victoria's transition into a circular and a climate-resistant economy. So the problems that we were seeing was a lack of information on the role of FOGO in green organic matter recycling. There was a lack of information on the nutrient values and the mineralisation of these organic products. Also, not a lot of information on the biological status of the organic products and information on the nutrient levels and the mineralisation of those organic products once they went into the soil. Also, the biological status of organic products in soil and the product-specific information on the influence of recycled organics on plant health. Agpath was a leading researcher applied for and was successful in receiving a major grant to investigate how raw materials such as FOGO and feedlot manure could be incorporated into the waste stream, resource stream for farmers in a fit-for-purpose products. This is probably familiar around the world. Landfill, contamination, and the bins that we get to use in Australia that are also contaminated, although they are quite clearly identified as what they should be. Raw materials and a finished compost from a commercial producer was delivered to Agpath's own farm and windrowed for the project. So what we were wanting to see was how can we divert organic material from landfill and transform it into a valuable resource, such as a stock feed or a compost or organic amendment, and how can we produce better fit-for-purpose products? It's not much use producing compost or some product if it's not fit for purpose. This will lead to decreased susceptibility in pest and diseases and increased productivity. They will give confidence to users in products and inadequate information on the presence of toxic contaminants. And this is a major problem in our composting here in Australia. Address carbon capture by improving organic matter in the soils and improve the resilience of current farming systems to increasing climate variability. Contribute to improved national standards for the organic products and determine a cost benefit for the user. Substitute conventional infinite resources into an environmentally compatible recycled organic materials. And reduce energy input into the food production system by replacing energy-intensive inputs with environmentally compatible recycled organic materials. Unfortunately, all council collection agencies in Victoria, both metropolitan and country, are finding that people are not being serious in the correct use of their various bins. This slide shows contamination coming from the FOGO delivery. Over 100 hours of my staff's time was taken to take out over 1,000 kilograms of rubbish from 40 cubic meters of FOGO. This makes the FOGO unusable for farmers, by farmers, and is a great disincentive to uptake a nutritious resource. Receival stations are having to install expensive sorting screening stations to pre-sort the rubbish from the FOGO before it can be mulched. If we look through the next slides, it will show the experimental plots and the pasture plots that we had for vegetables and the pasture. The FOGO and feedlot manure were blended in various rates and allowed to mature. Blends of 25, 75%, 50-50, and 75-25 of feedlot manure with finished compost or feedlot manure with FOGO were used as treatments on replicated plots and field plots on 2 different soils for pasture, 2 different soils for vegetables, and where we use baby spinach and snow peas, and vegetables were grown across the summer and winter. So this is showing the windrows that we established. It's showing the experimental plots that we were using. It's showing the plots that we used for our vegetables because we were having problems having farmers coordinate their growing season with our experimental work. So we found it easier to grow our own. The trial data included 35 parameters of soil, temperature, diversity of plant species in the pastures, soil biology, nutrient in the plants and soil. This data is with a statistician at the moment. The aim is to encourage farmers to take up the regenerative biological approach to farming and to move away or minimize polluting synthetic chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. The bottom line is important. We considered the cost of raw materials delivered and the cost of synthetic chemicals, and the figures came straight from the chemical companies. The cost of making compost and compost tea. Organics came out ahead, but there was reduced added cost of fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, and because the organic and regenerative crops and pastures were healthier with less pest and diseases and fewer weedy species in the pasture and in the vegetables. Using the Victorian government's statistics of 2022, local council waste in Victoria itself is over 650,000 tonnes a year. This is waste. The cattle manure from the feedlots was over 2 million tonnes. So if we then convert to greenhouse gas emissions, the methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, etc., dry FOGO produces about 217 kilograms of CO2 per tonne. Dry compost in landfill, mostly anaerobic, is over 1,000 kilograms of CO2 per tonne. So if we convert our FOGO from landfill, we can assume a CO2 equivalent per tonne using our 50-50 blend of FOGO and feedlot manure on the Victorian figures as a reduction of 6 million kilograms or 6,000 tonnes of CO2 annually. These figures are based around a paper by Perez et al. In 2023. When moving from conventional farming inputs to biological inputs, it is the soil that is being prepared and that the soil biota can generate the plant available nutrients for the crop. Remember, it is the microbiology that drives plant available chemistry in the soil, not the other way around. No microbes, no long-term productivity. It is the carbon-nitrogen ratio and inputs that will improve soil health and productivity, allowing for rapid decomposition of organic matter and more plant-available nutrients. We were looking at the best nitrogen mineralisation, and the blend that contained the FOGO with the manure in any proportion appeared to enhance mineralisation. Our data is very preliminary, but as yet we have not determined which blend is best, but the 50-50 FOGO manure is looking best. These products will reduce methane emissions from animals on better nutrient pastures, resulting from organic inputs to increase fertility, result in reduction and elimination use of synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, where there is a poor nitrogen use efficiency and high wastage of gaseous ammonia losses and pollution. Of all the compost and manure individual lots and blends, only the 25-75 FOGO feedlot manure produced a fungal to bacterial ratio that is within the range expected for a good microbial activity mineralization. On the Agpath biological farm, where the blends were applied as treatments and the soil biological response was calculated, finished compost produced the highest plant available nitrogen, over 220 kilograms per hectare equivalent, compared with 160 on the untreated control. And on the other farm, which was a synthetic chemical farm, the figures were around 75 kilograms per hectare. What was interesting is on both properties was the extraordinary response to plant available nitrogen from the compost tea compared with other treatments, averaging around 300 kilograms plant available nitrogen. To explain compost tea, it's made from thermal aerobic compost made from raw materials from off the property itself, nothing from outside. If the cost of production is compared with the cost of compost and that of the synthetic chemicals, then even with extra applications of tea compared with other products, it is very cost effective because there are future savings in not having to apply pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides. We've been on our farm for 56 years and have not used synthetic chemistry in that time. We do not have weedy species in our pastures because we have fungal-dominated soil profile. We have 2 times more nitrogen in the ammonium form than we have in the nitrate form. We have no disease nor pests in our vegetables and our fruit trees, and our cattle have never needed drenching nor medicating. Our farm is a living proof of the concept of farming the soil. But back to the compost. FOGO with feedlot manure is an inherently resource-conservative process that retains carbon and key plant nutrients and micronutrients back into the soil. Cost of application, as well as nutrient outcomes, is of importance to farmers. Nitrogen, carbon, and protein is important to graziers. And on this one graph, I've just selected one of the hundreds that are in the research program, but it's indicative of what we're seeing. Is the treatments of carbon is similar pretty well across all of the treatments. FOGO was the freshest material, so we see here it's generally got the highest protein and nitrogen. However, what's important for the pasture response is the nitrogen, carbon, and protein generated by the compost tea over on the right-hand side. Now, it's not as high, but it's really not that much different. And in terms of cost, it's hugely different. So this makes compost tea a very desirable product for farm health efficiency, where large amounts of compost may not be available. Where we have farms in Australia, one paddock is 10,000 hectares. So there's never going to be enough compost. But what they're doing is they're making compost tea in 30,000 litre old winery vats, and they are using the compost tea across their 10,000 hectares by 5, by 6, by 7 very effectively. So in the broadacre situation, they simply can't make sufficient compost. And those alternatives really need some serious consideration. And up in the northwest of Western Australia, in the 300 millimetre rainfall, there are growers up there that are now using compost tea very, very effectively and reducing all of their other input costs and still increasing their productivity. This nitrogen to carbon ratio, this particular graph at the top, the Labatouche farm is a very heavy chemical input farm. So when we put the different organic treatments on, we actually got a response because the microbial population in that soil is almost non-existent. So by putting on the organic matter plus the carriers like fish kelp molasses that we use to improve increase the speed of composting, we actually got a response. But on the one below, which is our farm that's been organic biodynamic for 56 years, there was really very little response because there is already a very, very high bacterial, fungal, protozoa population in that soil. So there was not a lot of response. We found that more and longer a farm has been used with high input synthetic chemicals and had herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides to control the resultant weeds, pests, and diseases, the fewer and less diverse soil biota were present. Also, the organic matter tended to be very low. Adding compost adds organic matter, and together with microbial foods accompanying the compost, which are the fish kelp molasses, there was a noticeable stimulatory effect in the soil biota. In all the treatments, the general microbial activity was lower than in the biological farm, and I'm talking about the chemical farm here, but the response was greater. So what we've done by introducing organic matter back into the soil, minimized ploughing, removing synthetic chemicals or minimizing synthetic chemicals, we've begun to restore the soil food web. We have valorized urban and animal waste as a valuable resource. The workshops and field days held associated with this work help farmers to have confidence that alternative inputs to synthetic chemistry can still give them their output, but with soil and animal health in the forefront. Most importantly is the cost reduction in inputs compared with the traditionally high input synthetic chemicals was most notable. We are allowing the microbes in the soil to provide the nutrients for the plants. We are allowing them to improve the soil resilience in the face of pest and disease attack. Healthy plants and animals rarely ever get sick. High bricks in plants is a direct effect on many of the insect pests. Plus, their gut digestive structure does not allow the intake of nutrients high in sugars. These next slides show the actual cost of raw materials products. Raw materials cost around $24 to $60 a tonne. This is feedlot manure or compost. Compost tea costs about 8 to 16 cents a litre, and it's generally used at about 150 litres per hectare. To summarise, when all the parameters are considered, too many to mention here, aged feedlot manure was the most available nitrogen. FOGO had the most available carbon and protein. But these three parameters, but compost tea was really the next best overall. So this is useful for the farmers because high quality compost is generally not available in the quantities required over large enterprises and can be expensive if transport is over a long distance. If the raw material can be made into high quality compost on site and made into compost tea, it can be applied more often onto the crops. The response is close to that of solid products, and significantly cheaper on an annual basis. This is an important consideration in Australia particularly, because farmers are at the price mercy of the major supermarkets who drive the prices down below the cost of production. You'll see here is some of the cost per application. On pasture, around about the $100, $80 to $100. On horticulture, closer to $1,000. And here, if you have a look at compost tea, we're looking at between $12 and $40 per application if we're looking at 150 litres per hectare, and we find this is a pretty good volume to put on. The soil food web. By feeding back into the agricultural system the organic matter from the waste streams common to all agriculture in cities, we are providing the soil food web with the nutrients necessary to stimulate the soil biota, which then increase the mineralisation of elements in plant available form. Organic matter is not generally plant available until it's been digested by microbes and turned into a plant available form. This is called mineralisation. Food is higher in nutrients and important for gut health. This information from David Thomas is really cause for alarm if we think about the damage that synthetic agriculture has done to nutrient values since the end of the Second World War. Ammonium nitrate factories that produced products to kill people were then turned into cheap fertilizer to kill soil. Since ammonium nitrate has been used as a fertilizer, these nutrient figures are the result. And if you look at that, there is no chemical, no element, no anything in our vegetables and fruit that have not decreased in quality, quantity, making our foods really just organic matter and really not nutrient dense at all. 90% of the soil nitrogen is in organic form, such as amino acids from plant material. But much of this organic nitrogen is made plant available in inorganic forms through mineralization by nitrifying and denitrifying bacteria. There are also natural sources of nitrogen in the atmosphere, in the rhizobia, in the plant roots, nodules. What we are finding is that there is a greater response to composted materials in soils that have been mined economically with the use of high input NPK fertilizers and urea and low organic levels. Soil biota populations have been destroyed or partly damaged or partly destroyed. The addition of compost and compost tea have added microbial food as well as organic matter to the soil, leading to the response that we're seeing. Soils that are farmed organically and biologically have high organic matter levels and very active soil biota. Additional compost has not made a significant difference in a good organic farm. And this is why it's interesting that compost tea brewed microbes with fish kelp and molasses generated a response comparable with the FOGO blended, FOGO compost blends. Compost tea is so cheap when compared with conventional synthetic chemicals that it's a viable option to reduce costs for farmers. Plants are healthier with less disease and insect attack because of the increased BRICS levels, the sugar levels in the tissue. Foods are healthier with greater levels of antioxidants, minerals, vitamins than those grown in synthetic chemistry. Comparing industrial farming with regenerative farming using the waste streams as resource streams is a win for the environment, for the farmer's bottom line, and for the health of animals and humans. If we want a future for our children and our grandchildren, we have to look to the circular economy where there is no waste stream to landfill, only resource streams into compost and healthy soils. We have to give farmers a pathway to resilient farming practices We have to help with their mental health because they see there is a future in farming again, and we can produce better foods for less cost. This slide is a stark reminder that we cannot continue to mine our soils into the future. So if we look at the left-hand side, every parameter is negative in terms of soil health and soil microbial health, which drives then plant health and human health and animal health. Soil fertility is lost because of the loss of soil biota and the important role that mycorrhizae particularly play in plant health and nutrient availability. Soil structures are lost. We lose topsoil in Australia at the rate of 14 million tonnes a year. Globally, the figure is an eye-watering 24 billion tonnes of topsoil is lost annually. That's 3.4 tonnes for each person on this planet. Not sustainable. With the loss of organic matter in plants covering all the soil, we're losing water holding capacity, the mycorrhizal biomass in the soil. With the loss of this organic matter, our soils lose their resilience in the face of more violent weather events. Loss of all of these parameters means that food produced is of poor nutrient quality. Costs to farmers increase annually. The productivity decreases, their mental well-being is in crisis. In Australia, one farmer suicides every 10 years, every 10 days. Every 10 days, a farmer suicides in Australia. On the right-hand side, you'll see that there's a lot of resilience. And this is what we should be looking for if the future for our children has got a place and they're going to see a world and be able to live in a world that we're living in today. We have to do better. With this other side here, the farmers are able to see a future in that their input costs go down, but they're able to maintain productivity. And even if they're not making the same amount of money in terms of how much their profit is actually higher because their input costs are lower. So they don't have to produce as much to get a profit margin that they can't get with other forms of agriculture. And so this is our farm at home. This is our experimental plot on our own farm. And I put it to you that although we have to feed 9 billion people, probably and more, the United Nations says if we continue to plough soil and lose topsoil and lose our soil biota and lose particularly our mycorrhizal fungi, we have potentially 60 harvests left. And that's not what we want to leave for our children.